Welcome to a very special live episode of Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Thursday, July 24th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Texas game in 37 days, the game against Michigan in 128 days. If you're planning your next event, make it unforgettable with Grateful Griddle, Columbus's favorite food truck, serving up smash burgers, gourmet sandwiches, and good vibes. Book your catering today at gratefulgriddleoh.com. I'm joined by Tony Gerdeman here at day 2 of Big Ten Media Days. We are 2/3 of the way through what is turning into a marathon event with the league being as big as it is. And it was Ohio State Day on Tuesday. Wednesday, there were 6 teams, but it was really kind of Oregon and Penn State Day. We're going to be talking a lot about Penn State because Penn State is a team that it was picked by the league's media to win the Big Ten this year. And it's a really interesting team because if you look at 2 years ago, a lot of the conversation was, boy, Michigan, they've gotten close, but boy, they brought back all these veteran players. Is this year they can do it? And then, of course, they went on to win the national championship. Last year, the conversation was, boy, Ohio State, they have gotten close, but now they've brought back all these veteran players. Is this the year they can win the national championship? And they do. Tony, Penn State's been close a few times. They got to the quarterfinals last year, nearly won the Big Ten championship game, nearly beat Ohio State, haven't quite gotten over the hump. But Tony, boy, they've got a team loaded with veteran players, a lot of whom could have gone to the draft and chose to come back for one more year to try to achieve some team goals. This is all sounding very familiar. I guess the big question is, will the story end the same way it has the last 2 years?
I don't think so. What's the next question? No. They are. Everybody's embracing it. Like James Franklin said, this is the best personnel he's ever had in terms of players and coaches. And yeah, I thought it was interesting. He also made mention that they made it to the playoffs last year with 3 new coordinators, basically special teams coordinator, offense and defensive coordinator, and so this year again a new defensive coordinator. They got a lot of talent. Their schedule going to Ohio State is tough, but again, the regular season doesn't necessarily matter as long as you make it into the postseason. And what can you do there? And I mean, they're well equipped. I still want to be convinced. And one of the Penn State players was asked about quarterback Drew Allar, like, tell us something about him. And he went on about his leadership and how he is the leader of the team, and they will follow him everywhere and wherever. He's going to take them as far as they go. I still need to see it because I was totally not convinced Michigan would win a national championship. Yeah. That's a different show on whether I'm right or wrong about that one. You still want to be convinced. You always thought Ohio State had the talent to do it. It's just would it get done? It's not easy to win national championships. I think that's the key also to remember. It's not easy to do this. And only one of the 130-some teams now actually get it done. Can Penn State be that one?
Well, this is the time of year. We are in Vegas, so we'll frame this in terms of odds. No one is even money to win the national championship this year. The safe answer on will fill in the blank win the national championship this year is no, because odds are you're going to be right about every team except for one. And there are so many things that can go wrong on, en route to a potential national championship. And, Ohio State last year had a relatively easy run through the playoff where they thumped Tennessee pretty good. They're up 34-0 in Oregon in the second quarter, and that game was, over before halftime. Texas was at the 1-yard line with a chance to tie the game with a couple minutes left. Notre Dame, that game looked like it was over just after halftime. And then Ohio State needed the 3rd and Jeremiah play to kind of put that away finally. So you're at that point, you are one play away from, if Jack Sawyer gets there late against Quinn Ewers, well, maybe it's a different thing. So there are a lot of ways that can go wrong and it can't work out. But talking to James Franklin, he is very optimistic about what he's got back. And I think, everyone immediately will say Drew Allar, but it feels like for Penn State, a lot of it is going to start with the offensive line where they got a lot of guys back. And man, Ohio State, the duo at running back that they had last year, Travion Henderson, Quinton Judkins, both of them finished with 1,000 yards each and 10 10 touchdowns. Were you around when James Franklin was talking about Nick Singleton and Katron Allen and just the amazing stat that he was talking about? Yeah.
That they could finish 1 and 2 in Penn State history in rushing and have been splitting carries the entire time. To me, that's amazing. But that's also you stay there for 4 years, you rush for about 4,000 yards, and then you leave a legacy. And I think that's the other thing where these guys have an opportunity to do something that Penn State hasn't done. I mean, you can say the 95 team was the best Penn State team we've ever seen.
94.
94 rather.
Yeah.
95 was pretty good too.
Yes, it was.
But they didn't win a national champion. Under even the format 4 years later under the BCS, I think there's a pretty good chance they win a national championship that year. And I think it's okay to claim something like that, but to leave a legacy that is indelible, that's not something that Penn State players have been able to do. It's always you find the things to remember where you can, because the lasting memory is that last game or whatever it is, or the losses that kept you from your ultimate goals. What keeps this Penn State team from reaching that? Is it happenstance? Is it game management?
Yeah, it could be a lot of things, and game management is certainly a possibility, and there are hurdles that they have not gotten over yet. But if they don't get over the Ohio State hurdle this year, and they haven't beaten Ohio State since 2016, if they don't, that does not necessarily preclude them from making the college football playoff or
the Big Ten championship
or the Big Ten championship game or the college football playoff. None of those things. And it does not, if they lose to Oregon at home, we just saw a team lose 2 games in Big Ten play and go on to win the national championship. So there's a little bit more margin for error there for Penn State this year, which probably helps James Franklin sleep at night to a certain degree, where it's not, well, if you can't beat the team, if you can't slay the dragon you haven't been able to slay in 9 years, that boy, you're immediately doomed. You have a little bit of a margin for error there. So that probably helps. They also have a new defensive coordinator, and he said this is the 3rd straight year that they have a new defensive coordinator, but they've had really good defenses each year. It hasn't been, they've had a disaster of a year in the middle. They had Manny Diaz, who left to be a head coach. They had Tom Allen, who left to be a defensive coordinator at Clemson. And now you have Jim Knowles, who came over from Ohio State. We have seen the impact that Jim Knowles can have, and they don't need to be much better. They just need to be pretty okay, pretty much the same, and they probably will be a little bit better because we have seen Jim Knowles at work. But you also have, well, let's talk about the defense first before we talk about some of the ancillary benefits of Jim Knowles.
Well, I think they're good enough to win a national championship. They've got good guys up front, even though they lost Abdul Carter and they've lost some things. They're always going to have defensive backs. They're always going. They seem to have more safeties than anybody. They just roll new guys in there. And Zachy Wheatley, I think, had 90 some tackles last year. And I was asking him about the safety-driven defense that Jim Knowles likes to talk about. He's like, yeah. I'm not going to get into it, but I'm looking forward to it. So there's a lot of the whole yes, Jim Knowles thing, but I'm not. I can't talk too much about it.
Yeah, right.
But it's good.
Yeah, and Luke asks here, has there been a champion that was as weak as Penn State is at tight end and wide receiver this year? I can't remember one, and then follows up with even defensive champions like Alabama and Georgia of years past had great skill talent. And yes and no. I mean, how great was the some of those Alabama teams, the earlier Alabama national championship teams in terms of skill talent? Like, they had it, but you look at the running backs. There was Derrick Henry Alabama teams that were not necessarily great at wide receiver, but you had Derrick Henry and you had an offensive line. They have, they don't have Tyler Warren this year. They did bring in 3 transfer wide receivers, 2 of whom led their previous teams in receptions or in receiving last year, and one of whom is coming over from Troy after a solid career there as well. But man, if you have an offensive line like they do, and you have 2 running backs like they do, and the defense is what it potentially could be, and I want to get to Lisa's comment in a minute on the defense. They don't have to be David Klingler Houston. They just need to be able to put, I think that the days of 52-49 national championship games are kind of over.
Well, and it wasn't that long ago when Ryan Day said you need to score 40 points in the playoffs to win. And we've seen that that's not the case anymore, whether it's just defenses catching up or the slower style that some teams are playing. And with the Penn State defense, they're always going to have individual talents. And then the way that Jim Knowles builds them and gets them to go, we'll see how much he can raise them. But the Alabama thing, the skill talent that they would have, it took to like Tua where Nick Saban was like, I should get NFL quarterbacks. And he had Jalen Hurts before that. But in terms of the arms, like that's when Alabama like kind of came into the modern era and were able to win with crazy offenses. Before it was crazy defenses and enough offense with like the quarterback that played against Ohio State in 2014 was like
Jacob Coker.
No. That it wasn't him. It was another quarterback. Coker was before that. Coker won national championship.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The fact that and Philip something or other. Blake Sims.
I just have Cooper Bateman in my head, and he was only very briefly their quarterback. But you go through the Greg McElroy years, and you go through some of the other. It was a never-ending stream of white dudes with Bama bangs, and it just Blake Sims, So
and he was
fine, but I think you also saw under Nick Saban. He basically, I remember is this what we want football to be?
Yeah.
Press conference where it was, guys are running the hurry up, and he's saying, this is a player safety issue. Is this what we want football to be? And everyone kind of shrugged and went like, well, this is what we're going to do. And he kind of went, all right, I can win that way. And then he did. So not everyone is Nick Saban, and James Franklin is not Nick Saban because no one's Nick Saban. But I think this is not a team that is by any means a lock to win the national championship, but it feels like they have a lot of the pieces. Do they have all the pieces? Will they be able to put the pieces together? That's kind of the really interesting question.
Well, and I think my question for them is that the area where the two biggest questions you could have on a program, and the two worst places to have those questions, quarterback and head coach. I really like James Franklin for these things. Like he's always great to talk to. We need to see him get over that hump, and it's a very big hump. Like you need to beat some of the best programs in college football. You need get over the hump against Michigan in 2023. You need to beat the national champs. Get over the hump against Ohio State. You need to beat the team that becomes the national champs. Like that's not an easy thing to do. That's why he's not been able to do it. But again, you shouldn't have to just be able to do the easy things. At some point, you've got to be able to do the difficult things. And the problem with that is Ohio State's really talented as well. Oregon's really talented. Whoever they end up with playing wherever is going to be really talented as well. And what happens when they meet up with Notre Dame, where they have, like last year, they had some good moments, but they faded down the stretch. And that's not just on James Franklin.
Right.
And I know you've got an angry Penn State team. I was asking Zeki Wheatley about Ohio State, like in general. Like how much would it mean, how badly do you want to beat Ohio State, things like that. It's like, we're just – Tom, they're just taking it one game at a time, and not really focused on anything. The disappointments of whatever. They're just focused on themselves, and it's all of the coach speak that the coaches want them to convey. But again, I said it yesterday, and I asked you, like, how badly would this destroy Penn State to lose to Ohio State 2 times this year, or in fact a third time in the playoffs?
Right, and that's where you go from when is it going to happen to this might not happen. When you have the year where all the stars align and your roster comes back and you have the 2023 Michigan team or you have the 2024 Ohio State team, and then it doesn't happen. I mean, think where Ohio State fans were after the Michigan game last year, where it was like, certainly this is the year that we will reach all of our goals, and the goals were to beat Michigan and win the Big Ten and win the national championship. And you have the shocking loss to Michigan, so goals 1 and then also 2 are off the table, and then then it really was Natty or bust. That to me is the point where you kind of go, okay, so this is just not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But there are a lot of teams that are kind of in that boat right now where, yes, it happened for Michigan in 2023. Yes, it happened for Ohio State in 2024. You could very easily look at Oregon in 2024 and say, well, they're number one. They've already beaten Ohio State at home. They're going in, they have a first round bye. They've won the conference championship. They're undefeated, best team in the nation. If not now, Tony, when would this possibly happen? And then it's 34-0 in the second quarter. But then you look at Georgia. Georgia, in what was in the Tua game that you mentioned, all they had to do was not have a true freshman come off the bench and throw a 42-yard touchdown in overtime. How hard can that be? Well, turns out fairly hard.
In overtime.
And it was, and everyone's chanting 1980 at them. Well, obviously this is never going to happen for Georgia until it did. And then it did. And it happened 2 years in a row. And now no one says this can't happen for Georgia. Georgia can't get over the hump. Notre Dame kind of got over the hump sort of last year in that they actually won a major bowl game for the first time since 1994, but they have won a national championship since 1988, and they had a lot of stuff lining up for them last year. So then if not then, when? And not only one team can win the national championship. Only one team can answer that question in the now, and there's going to be a lot of teams that are asking, if not now, when, that are going to get a sad answer at the end of the season.
And also, I remember you were talking about if not now when. I was thinking exactly of the Michigan game where I am upstairs in the press in the media area waiting for Ryan Day. The game has been lost. Everybody is like, I can't believe what I just saw. And then you finally get up there and we're like, well, if you can't win this game, how, good luck. Are you ever going to win this game? One, and then two, how do you come back from this? And yet they did. So we can sit here and I can sit here and say I'm not convinced of Penn State, and then I'm happy to be proven wrong. Tom, do you know the last time the Big Ten won 3 national championships in a row? Because I sure don't, because I couldn't scroll that far down on Wikipedia to find 3 national championships in a row, because you probably have to go back to the 50s or the 60s.
Yeah, I was trying to think I don't know if – Michigan won a couple in the 40s and maybe like the Paul Brown Ohio State team and a couple of the Michigan teams then, or in the 1930s and 40s, like Minnesota won a couple back then, and maybe you could string together a couple that way. But it has been a minute for sure. I do want to get to the super chat from Jordan Kapler, and then we'll get back to Lisa's question. Jordan wants to know, what's the over-under of Penn State being asked if this is a natty or bust season? Also being Columbus this weekend, if any of you want a free beer.
Oh, wow. Can you just drop them off? Like, I don't want to hang out with you, Jordan, but if you could just drop them.
James Franklin didn't get asked that specifically in those terms, but, it was kind of asked. It was kind of like, okay, what does it take to get over the hump this year? Because it does seem like a lot of the pieces are there in place. And he said, it's sort of encouraging. And Drew Allar said a lot of the same stuff, which tells you that this is how they're talking about it internally. They're close. They've been close. It's not like they're getting blown off the field by Ohio State. They got stopped with a goal line stand, a dramatic goal line stand, and then Ohio State was able to run the clock out. But it wasn't like Ohio State won by 32 points yet last year in State College. How many times have we been in State College and it has been an incredibly close game? Since that 2016 game, 2017 was the late KJ Hill touchdown and the Benjamin Victor touchdown before that. 2020 we were there because there were back-to-back years that they were in Columbus, because there were back-to-back years they were in Penn State. And Penn State was, it doesn't matter. 2017 was in Columbus. That was the big dramatic comeback with JT Barrett going 16 for 16 in the fourth quarter. But that was a huge comeback. 2018 was the year that was in Penn State with the KJ Hill touchdown. 2000, and that was the year that they ran it on 4th and 5, and everyone went nuts over that. 2020 was the weird COVID year, and Ohio State won that by 13 points or something like that. 22 was close. 22, Ohio State had to come back in the fourth quarter to win.
Easy 13-point win in that one.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but I mean, like by the standards of that series, that's a blowout.
But it was also close in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, right.
Ohio State got a late score.
And 22, Ohio State had C.J. Stroud got the ball back with about 7 minutes left, I think, trailing, and they They had a long, I think that was a long Travion Henderson touchdown run to win that one. And then last year, they had to have that big goal line stand to get out of there. This is Penn State needing one more play. And eventually, if you're knocking on the door, eventually you will not, will it be this year? Will it be next year? Well, they don't play, I don't think, for a couple of years.
Yeah, right.
It is a couple of years that they don't play Penn State, but so if not now, when is, well, it might be a minute.
I think the other thing, the reason Natty or bust is not used is because no Penn State players or no Penn State coaches have said that. This was an Ohio State Denzel Burke
said it. Yeah.
Thing. That's why that phrase has come up and to Ohio State, and it's just become this. Everybody was saying it last year about Ohio State, and while nobody's saying that phrase about Penn State, for one, it's because it's Penn State. And I don't know if nationally are they viewed as Ohio State last year, because I don't think they are. People that are just looking at the Big Ten, they're saying, sure, but I don't think people see them in the same light as they saw Ohio State last year. And again, if Nick Singleton comes out and says Natty or bust, baby, then boom, it's going to go crazy. But if you don't say it, then there's no reason to talk about, like, hey, if I were to go, James, last year Denzel Burke said Natty or bust.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, well, that doesn't apply to us. Do we want to win? Sure.
Yeah.
But
do you want to? There's plenty of pressure on them already, and it wasn't Ryan Day who went out and said that, because Denzel Burke's off the NFL one way or the other, and if it is bust, if it isn't Natty, then it's bust, and then you're what does bust mean? Does bust mean that you need to fire the whole coaching staff? I mean, James Franklin, I think, has a substantial amount of time left on his contract, so that's probably not going to happen, at least for the foreseeable future.
And then please remove that comment from Troy V about the 3 straight, because I wanted to be the one to let everybody know that it was 1940, 41, and 42. For the listeners, Tom, I have let them know.
Yeah.
For the viewers, I've confirmed.
Troy has cheated off of Tony's paper, apparently. Yes, 1940, 41, and 42. So,
just because he could get to Wikipedia faster than me.
So there you go. So there's the answer to that. One interesting angle to the Penn State interviews today was the impact of Jim Knowles beyond just the defensive side of the thing, because Drew Allar talked about this a bunch, but James Franklin also talked about the fact that you do self-scout, and you try and be as brutally honest as you can with yourself about, okay, where are our strengths, where are our weaknesses, where did we make a mistake, what are we not seeing? But you're doing it to yourself. And he said, these are people you work with, these are people you see every day, these people are your friends. So you might pull your punches a little bit. Having Jim Knowles come in when he was the one who had to stop Penn State last year, and where he did stop Penn State last year, he said Jim Knowles can come in and just say, throw the game plan down on the desk, say, here's our scouting report, here's what we saw, here's our evaluation of your players. And Ohio State, that was internal Ohio State documents. That's not was not something that Ryan Day was going to fax over to Penn State afterwards. It's, this is not Ohio State pulling any punches. This is just, here's our honest assessment of your team, what we saw about your team, maybe tendencies you might not be aware of, maybe, things that, we don't think your team can do. That's incredibly valuable. You can learn so much from that in terms of what Penn State is going to be working on this season, but also now Ohio State's kind of starting from scratch, because now Penn State has all of their answers from the last test key. So now they got to make up a new test.
Yeah. And when you're talking about self-scouting, a lot of times that's GAs, it's analysts, and you're trying to get it done.
Yeah. QC guys do that. That's one of the main jobs.
Right.
Yeah.
The week of a bye week, their bye weeks last year were week 3 and then like a month later. And now this is Jim Knowles coming in with like, yeah, that's fine. Your QC guys did a great job. Here's what we saw in studying all of those games and where we thought we could attack Drew Allar and where he necessarily couldn't attack us. And I think it's similar to when Bill O'Brien was Ohio State's offensive coordinator for a couple of weeks. He gave Ohio State and Ryan Day a perspective. It's almost like hiring a consultant.
Yeah.
Take a look, see what you think, tell us about it. And
the Bobs. Hiring the Bobs. Only one of the Bobs.
And then so Jim Knowles gets to Penn State. He's like, here's what we found. Do with it what you will, but let me talk to you about it. And Drew Allar found it very enlightening. And you've got to be a pretty confident and complete person and good to be like, here's a file of what we would say. I don't want to call them your faults, but these were where we thought we could take advantage of your lesser strengths.
Why is the word "sucks" in the title of this Word document? Well, but yeah. So now you have that to work off of, and he also. I mean, I've seen a lot of questions about Penn State's wide receivers, and I definitely get it. We all saw the. Our buddy Omar Austin, do they have the wide receivers to do anything of substance? And the answer is, shake your magic 8-ball and answer unclear, come back later, ask again later. That's kind of where I am with that, where last year they brought in transfer wide receivers, and one of them was Julian Fleming from Ohio State, but they also brought in, Dante Cephas from Kent State last year? That didn't work at all. They got to a point where you're in the Orange Bowl against Notre Dame, and your wide receivers have 0 catches for the game. That's almost impossible to do. Ohio State hasn't done that since, the 2011 Illinois game where they completed 1 pass and it was a touchdown to Jake Stoneburner. That's almost impossible to do. They almost can't be. They almost have to be better. They almost can't be worse than they were last year. And, you don't have Tyler Warren. So that's going to be, you're going to have to figure out your tight ends. And, they have tight ends. They have guys there. It's not like they haven't been recruiting tight ends. But I don't know exactly, on the spectrum of from 1, which is where Penn State was last year in terms of wide receivers, to 10, which is where Ohio State has mostly been under Brian Hartline. I don't know if they're a 4 or a 6 or a 7. I don't think they need to be a 10. I don't know if they need to be a 7. If they're just a 5, given how good the running backs are, given what the offensive line should be, and given how good the running backs are out of the backfield too, that they just have to be decent, I think, right, to get them potentially to where they need to be.
Right. So here's who they've added. Trevor Pena from Syracuse, 84 catches, 941 yards, 9 touchdowns last year. Kyron Hudson from USC, 38 catches, 462 yards, 3 touchdowns last year. And Devontae Ross from Troy, 76 catches, 1,043 yards, 11 touchdowns. Now, how does Troy translate to Penn State? It has not gone well for Penn State going smaller.
Yeah.
Of course, it didn't go well for Penn State going from Ohio State to Penn State either. But 3 guys that are veteran and productive, three-year guy, 4-year guy, like Trevor Pena, I think is going to be a 6th-year guy. So guys that have seen it and done it, and 2 of those have done it at a Power 5, Power 4 program. So they're going to be better than they were. I still want to see Drew Allar be a guy that attacks with receivers. I think the crutch last year was Tyler Warren, and it was fancy. And it was like a briefcase that has wheels, a motorized briefcase. He just ride it. I think these receivers need to be certainly more involved. I want to see Drew Allar make use of them in a way where he's comfortable doing it, and downfield as well, because that was one of the big things last year, the lack of downfield throwing, the lack of downfield completing. And this year, if that's an issue again, it can't be just because the defense is playing too deep so we can't throw the ball. It's got to be more than that.
Yeah.
And especially when you have such a creative offensive coordinator as Andy Kotelnicki.
Yeah, Andy Kotelnicki will do so much creative stuff, but sometimes it's like, that's really different to put your, a guy who's an offensive lineman in motion to, change your blocking angles. But did that actually do,
Right.
you gained 3 yards. So like it was creative, but did it work? Like, I think Can Drew Allar take the next step is kind of one of the interesting questions, because they did have Tyler Warren as just the, in the same way that Ohio State kind of has the Jeremiah Smith do something cool play. Like that was Penn State had the Tyler Warren do something cool play where it's just like, line up as a quarterback. You can run the ball, you can throw the ball, you can catch the ball if you want to. Throw the ball to yourself. We don't care. Like he was kind of their cheat code last year. Now he's gone. Now now they do have to. Maybe that simplifies things a little bit, where it's just, okay, lean on your very good offensive line, lean on your very good running backs. And James Franklin talked about the fact that their run-pass mix in, I think last year was something like 57-43, 57% rushes, 43 passes. And he gave the same speech that we hear over and over from coaches, that run-pass balance doesn't mean 50-50. It means you're able to do either one in any situation. And I don't know how well they were able to pass at times last year, but I don't, again, how much of that was running wide receivers, how much of that was quarterback. And can Drew Allar in his third year take that next step, where there were times Drew Allar had statistically a really good season, but every once in a while it was like, oh, what was that? You'd see throws that were like, that wasn't even close to the right spot. And the season-ending interception was another one. It was like, oh, that was 4 bad choices at once. Can he take that next step this year?
Yeah, and you don't have to be the best quarterback in the nation. Will Howard won a national championship. And for Ohio State, think of the quarterbacks that they've had that have won national championships. Now, again, these are the olden days of 2014 with Cardale Jones and 2002 with Craig Krenzel, who's none of those 3 guys are on Ohio State's Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks.
Former NFL starting quarterback Craig Krenzel
from the Chicago Bears. So you just need to have a guy that, I'm tired of saying it, and people are tired of hearing me say it, do the routine things routinely. That's the Ryan Day thing. That's what he wants from his quarterbacks. Drew Allar can do that, then good job. But at some point, you're going to have to win a game as well. And that's something where – and it can't just be Michigan State or Oregon. It's going to have to be something in the postseason or the Ohio State thing. But, again, you beat Ohio State, what do you do after that? Because you're still – yes, you got over the hump, that hump.
Yeah.
But then you still have this big hill of the college football playoff. And as we saw from Ohio State last year, they didn't beat Michigan, but they went on to win the college football playoff. Do you think they'd rather switch those 2 things?
No. I think I would be interested in, a real like sodium pentothal kind of poll of Penn State fans right now. Would you be happy with a season where you beat Ohio State but don't win the national championship, don't win the Big Ten? Would you be happy with a season where you beat Ohio State and win the Big Ten championship but don't win the national championship? Or, does it absolutely require all 3? Or if you lose to Ohio State, you have the 2024 Ohio State season, you lose to the Buckeyes, you don't go to win the Big Ten championship game, but you do win the national championship. Would you be happy with that? I tend to think if you're not happy with a national championship, then go play intramurals, brother. Like that's the ultimate goal. And so if you're not happy with that, you may just not be happy anymore. And that's not a great place to be.
I think there would be we've talked about the moving of the goalpost of what constitutes a big game. And there would certainly be some, like you beat Ohio State, that's fantastic, but then you don't capitalize it. You've wasted that win against Ohio State.
The Oregon situation.
Where you're just not going to be happy until you have that national championship. And I get that, but maybe it's not necessarily baby steps because you don't beat Ohio State with baby steps, but that's a good first step and something that I think it would be interesting. Now, we can't go on Twitter and just say, hey, Penn State fans, because that's not our following, but it would be interesting to see what they would say.
Yeah, and then, sort of the interesting question is, okay, if they don't hit their goals this year, what does that mean? And Jeff wants to know, Franklin's awesome. Just ask him, does he survive if they lose again this year and a non-playoff win? Yes, the answer is yes. He's not going anywhere unless he chooses to go somewhere. But he just signed a contract extension a couple years ago. And I think it was a long one. I think he's going through at least 2030, 2032, something like that. Yeah,
10-year contract extension in 2021.
Okay, so he's got a 2031. So there you go. On average, I was right. And that's the buyout in 2021 was $64 million. So, you're not quite halfway through that. So you're looking at, say, $35 million. I hate to break it to you. College athletic departments are not exactly flush with cash right now. And if you are, you're spending it on stuff that's not spending, handing someone $35 million to not coach your football team anymore. So if he doesn't win the national championship this year, he will come back and try to do it again next year. But that's about as far as the consequences are likely to go there.
And it's similar to some of the talk about Ryan Day last year. If he doesn't do this, do you fire him? And again, you can't. it would be shocking if you fired a head coach who's consistently in the top 10, making the playoffs, certainly now making the playoffs. At some point, I would view it more as both parties just come to the realization like it's not working out, or James Franklin would leave. I just don't see him being fired for doing something that is incredibly difficult. That how many active coaches now have national championships? Kirby Smart, Ryan
3,
Day,
and Dabo Sweeney. Yeah,
So
3. So that's it is a very high bar, and we had someone on our board today talking about the fact that Ohio State wins one national championship every decade, and that's just not often enough. And the threshold that he set was they should be winning one every 4 to 5 years. And I went back and looked, and the only school to breach that standard in this century is Alabama. And that took literally the greatest coach in the history of the sport. And that's not a standard that anyone other than Nick Saban is going to reach probably ever. It's easier now to win more than one national championship in a decade for a school like Ohio State because they're going to make the playoff virtually every year. So you're going to have a shot every year. But it's also now harder once you're in to win. Nick Saban, under the current situation, the current setup, he was in virtually every year in a 2 or 4 team playoff. It's harder to win. So under the current situation, Ohio State probably wins more. Nick Saban probably wins less. But you're not winning. If Ohio State starts winning a national championship every 5 years, that would be one of the greatest runs in the history of the sport, period, full stop. And I think people would look at boy, they haven't won in 3 years. This senior class is about to graduate without a national championship. Boy, what do they have to do to fix that? And how many championships do you want? The answer is always, deep down, the answer is always more.
Yeah, because I've seen some great Ohio State teams that were not national champions. The 2019 team where that's the real history of Ohio State is a lot of good teams that weren't national champions. And you say Ohio State wins one every 10 years. That's only this century.
Right.
They went 35 years, 34 years
sure.
Between, because we're not counting 1970, between national championships. So, and
they had a bunch of really good teams in that stretch too.
Right. And so this is only a recent thing, recent last 20 plus years, but.
And that's kind of modern college football where you start to get into John Cooper introducing national recruiting and then
throwing the ball,
throwing the football, and there actually being a national championship game. That was, you can kind of draw a line at 1998 where it wasn't, you don't have split national championships anymore. Well, you did at least once after that, because 2003 it was the USC and Oklahoma, yes, national championship that year. But you go much further back, and undefeated Penn State in 1994 didn't get a chance to play for a national championship. Why? They were undefeated. They absolutely curb stomped Ohio State that year. They rolled everyone except they gave up 2 late touchdowns to Indiana, so the score looked close, and so voters went, well, they had a close win against Indiana, drop them in the polls, and then Nebraska jumped them, and then Penn State never got a chance to play Nebraska head to head. So it's hard to compare that era of college football to the modern era of college football. So and Lisa says most coaches, unless you have actually won a national championship, you don't really know how hard it truly is to do it. I think there's a certain that is both true and also maybe the absolute inverse of that, where, boy, I bet James Franklin would tell you he knows exactly how hard it is to win a national championship, because he's had some very good teams and he hasn't even gotten to the national championship game, and he's had some very good teams. So that is, I think, both 100% true and also not entirely true. So let's run through some of the questions that we've got saved here. Luke wants to know, is the regular season Penn State Ohio State game the litmus test? And this would be the litmus test for Penn State. Seems like that's been reflective of their postseason chances every year, where it just doesn't happen for them.
I'm just trying to bring up their schedule real quick to see when exactly that is, because it's
November 1st, right?
So they've got stuff before before then, they've got the Oregon
They
at
play the
home.
Oregon game at home, which I believe is the whiteout game this year.
But
Yeah.
still, I do think it is when at Ohio State. If they get that win, then they've got all kinds of momentum. People will believe in them. They got a week off before that to get it done.
They have 4 weeks off before that to get it done. I mean, their schedule is Nevada, Florida International, Villanova, off week, and then Oregon.
Yeah.
And then after that, they have at UCLA and Northwestern, and then they have to go to Iowa.
This is very set up.
This is, and then after Iowa, they've got an off week before Ohio State. They have an off week before Oregon and an off week before Ohio State. This is, unless you get the Indiana schedule where you don't have to play, you play one good team all year. This is as set up for success as they can be. So, you can look at this, you look at the talent returning, you look at the schedule, and it's like, if not now, when?
And if they beat Ohio State, then I don't see them losing another game in the regular season.
What about the ultimate letdown spot the following week at home against Indiana?
Well, see, and the good thing is they've got at Iowa, which could be like a look ahead if Ohio State was the following week.
Right.
But it's Iowa,
but it's not,
open week,
Yeah.
Ohio State. So I think it's almost like the schedule was put together this year knowing that this Penn State team was going to look like they do.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what the SEC does
Mhm.
and James Franklin even talked about that today, where the Big Ten is starting to schedule help their top teams like the SEC has done for a long time.
Well, I think back to 2019 and that Ohio State team that had the Big Ten handed them a schedule where the final 2 weeks of the season were Penn State at home and then at Michigan and then having to play Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game. And Ohio State played Penn State at home and they won. They played Michigan on the road and they won. And then they came in beaten up to the Big Ten championship game, and they had the audacity to be beaten up against a physical Wisconsin team and have a sluggish first half. And that was enough where then LSU jumped them in the polls to take the number 1 spot going into the playoff, and LSU got the first round bye against a Lincoln Riley Oklahoma team, and Ohio State had to go play Clemson.
Yeah.
And that was it. And so, the Michigan game is not going to move. I almost said never. And it's like, I don't know that I want to make any declarative statements about the future forever of college football at this point, but it's probably not moving anytime soon. But man, you can put Rutgers the week before that. You can put, I don't think the Big Ten is going to schedule Mercer or the Citadel for Ohio State the week before then, but it has been done by the SEC. Like, there's a reason that you see the SEC SoCon Challenge that week. It is because you're setting yourself up. And Ohio State has Rutgers before Michigan this year. They have had, they had Indiana the week before.
Mm-hmm.
When Indiana was not
right.
Kurt Signetti, Indiana. They've had Maryland the week before a couple times.
Bye week before Penn State this year.
Bye week before Penn State this year. Where it's a little bit strategic, where Ohio State and Penn State both have the week off before that game, because James Franklin talked about the fact that Alabama and LSU always have the week off, both of them the week before. Like, you can be strategic about this stuff. You don't have to just sort of random draw and like, well, we're going to. We're going to just, it's fair if everyone has exactly the same chance at everything. And he said that's not reflective of reality. That's not how the SEC does it. So he's, I think he's happy about the fact that that's how they're doing things now.
Ryan Day loved the idea of playoff expansion from 4 to 12 because it makes it easier to not be fired.
Yeah.
James Franklin, same thing, loves the expansion. All of these coaches want the safety of a larger playoff and an easier schedule. Mm-hmm. And we don't need to get into the automatic qualifiers and things like that. But if you require, if you reward easiness,
mm-hmm.
then watch the coaches revel in that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you're going to get what you incentivize,
mm-hmm.
and right now that's what they're incentivizing. It's the same conversation with the NCAA tournament expansion, where you look at any kind of feedback on NCAA tournament expansion, and there are 343 people in America who are in favor of it, and they're all the head coaches in Division I, because then we made the tournament, you can't fire me, we have to. Same basic thing here. I have put this comment from Lisa up about 4 times, and I don't think we've actually answered it, so we're going to answer it now. She says it took Knowles 3 years to become what he was last year. He wasn't great right away, and that's absolutely true. But when you look at where Penn State's defense was in 2024 and you look at where Ohio State's defense was in 2020 and 2021, that's very different. He's not digging out of the sub basement right now. Jim Knowles got to Ohio State at a point where it was dig up stupid. That was kind of where that defense was. He's getting handed the keys to a defense that, yeah, they lost Abdul Carter, but they have denied Dennis Sutton. Yeah, they lost Kobe King, but then they still have Zachy Wheatley. They have, the linebackers should be good. The defensive line on the whole should be good. James Franklin talked about one of their defensive tackles being maybe one of the best in the nation.
Zane
Durant, yeah. And so you have so many pieces, and this is already one of the better defenses in the nation. If he just keeps them status quo, they're going to be very, they're basically national championship caliber, assuming the offense is better.
Well, and Jim Knowles made the Ohio State defense better that first year, but the big plays made it to where they went from giving up 22.8 points per game in 2021 to 21 in 2022. But you could watch it and see, like, there are some better things. But then in his second year, they went from 21 points per game in his first year down to 11.2 in their second year. So that second year, things started clicking, and they also got a little less aggressive, and they changed some of the stuff that he wanted to do, and it worked out. But then last year, of course, it helps also to have a veteran defense. But I'm not expecting a big dramatic increase because, like Jeremiah Smith, what do you do as a sophomore? There's only so much room that you can do when Penn State was already one of the best defenses last year.
Thanks to Doreen for reposting this stream. And if you want to help us out, a couple things you can do. You can share this on your social media. You can make sure you like and comment on here. And make sure you are checking out our website as well, BuckeyeHuddle.com. It's up in the upper right-hand corner if you're watching. So always a reminder where we're from, where you can find us when we're not here. Penn State Sports Talk. Always enjoy having fans from the teams that we're talking about. Like we went through the college football playoff last year and had great conversations with Tennessee fans and Oregon fans and Texas fans and Notre Dame fans on these streams. So we do genuinely appreciate having folks from other teams providing some other perspectives as well. They say James Franklin brought facts today. James Franklin is fantastic at these events. I love talking to James Franklin because he will just kind of, you may agree or you may disagree, but he's going to tell you what he thinks. He's not going to tap dance around it. He's going to tell you what he thinks. And he generally has reasons for what he's saying. And he has a very interesting perspective because, number one, he's been at Penn State for, they said 13. I think they said, it was 12 or 13 years. It was him and PJ Fleck were the two today that I audibly gasped when he was like, PJ Fleck's been at Minnesota for 9 years. I'm like, that's not right. How does PJ Fleck not know how many years he's been there? It's been 5, right? No. Franklin's been there a long time. But what he said is he and Brett Bielema are the two coaches who have coached in the SEC and the Big Ten. And the perspective that you get from that, because you've been in the room. It's the same thing we talked about with, Jim Knowles kind of flopping the Ohio State game plan on the desk. Here's what we really think about you. He's been in the meetings. They've been in the meetings at the SEC. We think that this is how they do it. Well, let me tell you, I've sat in the meetings. Here is how they do it. Here's how, here's the benefit that brings. So that was that. And then quick follow-up that Jeremiah Smith had 55 yards last game. Knowles is going to be ready and motivated come November. Yeah, Jeremiah Smith's production in the games where he does have big numbers, everyone just kind of oohs and ahs. And in the games where he doesn't, it's, boy, Jeremiah Smith is going to want to prove them wrong, or Jim Knowles, I bet Jim Knowles would like to beat Ohio State. I bet that would be a, who wants to beat Ohio State more this year, Jim Knowles or home state kid Drew Allar or James Franklin?
Oh, James Franklin.
Yeah.
He's because Jim Knowles he's fine, whatever. It's not like he left. It's not like he was fired. He chose to leave. Yeah. Drew Allar. He could have been a Buckeye if he wanted to. Mm-hmm. James Franklin wants this one like nobody's business. Yep.
So Doug would like to shame you into hitting the thumbs up. So listen, it's not me. Doug is saying you should hit the thumbs up. So strong agree there. Jim Knowles Super Bowl is in Columbus. That may be Jim Knowles Super Bowl. That's not. It's James Franklin's Well, I was going to say conference championship game, maybe, but that may literally be the conference championship game. So maybe it's his NFL divisional round playoff game. I don't know.
We haven't really, and I'm sure we will talk about it later in the season. We have not necessarily really talked about Jim Knowles coming back to Columbus much,
right?
Because there's so much other stuff going on. But
yeah,
he'll have something under his sleeve.
Oh yeah, for sure. And having this is one of these things. I want to talk to Ross Fulton, who's our X's and O's guru, about this, and maybe one of our other X's and O's guys as well. Ohio State has spent the last 3 years going against Jim Knowles' defense in practice.
It's true.
Jim Knowles has spent the last 3 years going against Ohio State offense in practice. So who does that provide more of an advantage to? Because you run into an I know that you know that I know that you know situation, and you know each other really well. I tend to think that might favor the defense, just thinking to like the Army-Navy game where the two teams run a similar offense and they know each other so well that everyone is you're just fighting in a phone booth, and that is the always bet the under game. I wonder if that favors the defense in that case.
The difference being, however, is that the Ohio State defense, the Penn State defensive players are not accustomed to seeing the Ohio State offense all the time like Jim Knowles.
Right.
Whereas, over and over you see in practice, of course, you get better at it.
That's true.
So there's that aspect where this is going to be this is going to be Penn State's first time playing this Ohio State team this year.
That's true. And so that's a great point.
Thank you. That wrapped up the show. It's just
let's real quick hit a couple things. Jeff Frazier says, "Evening, fellas. Did you lose Kevin?" No, Kevin is.
Has he gone to the?
Come on. There's a movie line.
What?
Kevin. We forgot Kevin. Come on.
Because the free food and drinks down at the Mandalay Bay starts right. It's 6 to 8.
Starts literally.
So he
right
may
now,
have already left to go do that.
Yes, he was working on.
He's been working all day.
Yes.
He's been busy.
For once, we're not saying anything mean about him.
Right.
We're going to run through a couple of these because there are some great ones on here. Ethan Maxfield just asked, favorite Ohio State versus Penn State moment. And his suggestion was the Joey Bosa walk-off sack to end it in 2000. That would have been 2014, right? I think that was 2000. Yes, it was 14. Yep. TE13 appropriately with a tight end themed one. JT DeMarcus Ball, loudest I've ever heard the horseshoe. That was 2017. That was
what happened the next week, Tom. No, sorry. Keep going.
The answer to that is they gave up 55 points to Iowa. But that was one of the weirdest atmospheres inside Ohio Stadium I can remember, because everyone remembers the comeback win there. But that was one where Saquon Barkley returned the opening kickoff for a touchdown, and Penn State's up by a bunch. And there were a bunch of penalty calls at Ohio Stadium really didn't like. And it was like an angry vibe more than an upset vibe. It was like an angry vibe. And then they came back, and that was the game where you had Sam Hubbard tackling both Saquon Barkley and was that Trace McSorley? No, that was Trace McSorley at that point. But he tackled both. He tackled both guys on a read, and they come back, and Johnny Dixon had a big touchdown in the game, and Marcus Ball had a big touchdown in that game, and you got an incredible picture on the field of Isaiah Prince. There's a deep cut for all you longtime Buckeye Weekly heads, but it was. Look
at the numbers. Ohio State rushed for 201 yards. 3 for 328. They out yardaged them 529 to 283.
Outgained them by 2.4 yards per play. They outgained them every 4 plays. Ohio State got a first down more than Penn State did.
27 first downs to 17 for Penn State, and Ohio State needed 19 points in the fourth quarter to win the game.
Right, it was 21-3 Penn State.
Early second?
18 minutes and 20 seconds into the game. It's 21-3 Penn State.
And then it's 28-10 in the second.
Yeah, 28-10 with 5 minutes left in the second. Yeah. And
still 35-20 in the fourth quarter.
Right, yeah. That's crazy. Yeah, touchdown.
So
two Johnny Dixon touchdowns in the fourth quarter.
So answer the question, because to me it's the Joey Bosa one. Mm-hmm. I don't even know if it's the biggest walk-off, because I think the Sam Hubbard thing won.
Mm-hmm.
But it comes down to this one, and then for me, it's the Benjamin Victor late in 2018 with from Dwayne Haskins scoring the touchdown there at the end that you got to see live on the field, but I watched from the tunnel.
Yes,
and didn't actually see it happen until we saw because we're
the Dwayne Haskins to Ben Victor.
Yeah.
I was in the tunnel with you.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
We're just watching on the tunnel because we weren't allowed on the field because it was so late, and so our view from the tunnel is just the end zone.
And there's nothing in the end zone, and there's kind of like a roar, and then it kind of gets quiet, but there's nothing's happening, and all of a sudden there's an official backpedaling in the end zone. I was like, that's weird, and then all of a sudden Ben Victor shows up, and it's like, oh, I get it.
And
French
then
class.
Yes. And then afterwards, I think we finally got to see the play like before the post-game interviews on the television in one of the media rooms.
Yeah.
Like, now I understand.
Yeah. Two people on different sides here agreeing. The Penn State Sports Talk says, I like the Saquon kickoff, and Mozart's Ghost, who is an Ohio State fan, saying that Saquon kickoff return was the perfect way to open the game. It is that was. There's been some drama in that series. There's also been some plenty of whiteouts in that series. Ethan Maxfield says, well, was Ohio State the first team to get the whiteout game? The first whiteout game I remember, I don't remember. Maybe Penn State Sports Talk can fill us in. The first Ohio State Penn State whiteout game I remember was 2005, and that was the one where it ended up 17-10, and Tamba Hali came off the edge and flipped Troy Smith upside down for a game-ending sack on that one. That's the first one I remember. But
the groundswell started in 2002, but they list here on Wikipedia 2004 being the first one, and Ohio State would have been the next one.
But that was the first one that they lost the first one against number 9 Purdue in 2004. Boy, that is a sequence of facts I would not have come up with in a million years.
So then they lost to Ohio State in 2012, lost to Ohio State 2014. They beat them in 16, of course, with the crazy special teams play, and then, of course, lost in 2018. No whiteout in 2020, Tom. You were there. Can you confirm?
Yes, there was no whiteout. There was no any. There were a couple times in that 2020 season that I was at a game and I thought, this is deeply weird. Being at a night Penn State game the weekend, I think that was the weekend of Halloween, was it? I think it was. If it wasn't, it was a couple weeks after because the schedule got slid a little bit. But to be at Penn State and to be able to get a hotel room in Happy Valley for no money, and then have a 7-minute drive over to campus and just sort of get dropped at the stadium and walk in and be in the press box, and it's dead silent outside. It's like, this is not what this was like 2 years ago. Yeah. So it is. And then they haven't been the night game whiteout there since then. It's been Big Noon, just in case you think Ohio State fans are the only ones that are not big fans of Big Noon. So there you go. There's your little brief trip through the whiteout history. Lisa says that Illinois game is going to be interesting. That's the Ohio State-Illinois game. Do you think we'll end up getting stuck playing in crap weather like what usually happens? Well, that's a November game, or is that October?
I think it's October because we've even
that's like mid-October,
thinking
right?
the weather shouldn't be bad enough. It's October 11th.
Yeah, that
should still be in the 60s, but if it's raining, then the 60s is going to be cold. Mm-hmm. But Tom, I think it won't be as bad as the Northwestern Hurricane game, but Illinois, it's hardly ever great, but it's been since 2017? No,
16. No, at least. I've been back on the beat since 17. They were supposed to play in 2020. That one got canceled because of a COVID outbreak for Ohio State. I don't think Ohio State's been there since 15 or 16. 15. Okay,
yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean it's been a while. So assume that it will be windy. Brett Bielema talked about the fact that Brett Bielema yesterday was talking about just casually mentioned how windy it can get there, and 2015 they won 28-3. Yeah, that was it is. Can you believe that? I mean, for years and years and years, while I was in college, that was Ohio State's longest running series. They played Illinois more consecutive years than they had played Michigan, and now this is the first time Ohio State's gone back there in 10 years. Tim says they stopped doing the whiteout versus Ohio State. Yeah, not willingly they didn't. That's that is not their choice. That is our friends at the Fox Broadcasting Network making that choice for them. Mozart's Ghost has petitioned to bring back the night whiteouts, produces classic games. They're going to have one. They have had it in recent years. They just had it against Minnesota a couple years ago. They had, and they've got it against Oregon this year. So that one should be an absolute banger. That one is a circle it on your calendar. I hope Ohio State has a noon kickoff that week. I don't remember who they play, but I hope Ohio State has a noon kickoff so we can get home in time to watch that one.
What week is that?
I think it's Halloween weekend. No, it's not Halloween weekend.
Let's see here.
That's
that's
it's September 27th. Oh, is that the weekend is that the weekend we're out at Washington?
Yes, it is.
It is. Okay, well,
that's going to be a night game versus the night. Well, no, this will probably be a 3. We're not going to be able to see it.
Yeah.
Wow, darn it.
Anyway.
Oh, this is a depressing show.
Yeah. Couple more quick ones before we wrap up. Penn State Sports Talk says, how does Ohio State have open training camp practice and no other team does? Very smart on their part to bring in fans.
There's another Big Ten team that opens a week from today maybe it's Washington. So like
he's talking about bringing in the fans to watch, and that's a new thing. I think last year was the first year they did that.
Maybe
2 years ago.
Before,
yeah. It's been a relatively recent thing, and they'll do it for the first 1 or 2 or 3 practices. It's a chance to raise money for NIL. Was kind of the original
it's about
the original
1,500
purpose.
people or so.
Something like that. It's not it's not a huge crowd, and it's something that it's a lot like the first couple days of fall camp are almost like OTA days in the NFL, where you can bring in fans, and you're not doing install for the Texas game or anything like that. It's all very fundamental stuff. They're all wearing shells. They're not in full pads, so you're not giving away any state secrets. So yeah, I do think that's a smart approach, and I am a little surprised that hasn't caught on everywhere. But I guess how many people are going to go pay to watch Purdue football practice? I don't know, but Oregon, Michigan, Penn State, you would think you'd have enough interest there.
Unless the head coaches are just like, whatever it would make us, because this is going to be like $45,000-ish a day. The head coach is like, I don't want anybody saying anything. I'll just cut a check.
Yeah.
Like Brian Kelly cut a check for $1 million to their NIL fund. Like, maybe just keep people away. You know how paranoid coaches are.
All right, and so the last one, this is from our buddy Fort Wayne Buckeye. May have missed it with all the content here at Buckeye Huddle, but curious if Coach Day talked at all about special teams.
No,
I think he got, and that's not he's disregarding special teams. It's just he got asked so many different things. There was so much talk about NIL that it kind of like just didn't come up. It's like we talked about the offensive line depth on last night's show. It just didn't come up in conversation. That's the kind of stuff that normally would get asked about, but with all this other sort of extraneous off-field stuff, it just didn't come up.
That's one of the frustrating things about this is when you finally do get to talk to people and you get some questions in, when it's done, you're like, I wanted to ask this. Like talking with Ross Bjork yesterday, both of us were like, actually, I needed to ask this and this and this. And it's like, there's so many things, so many questions, so many answers, and then you can only get so much of it. And then when you get back to sit at your desk, you're like, I wonder about crap.
Yeah, it is a, there's always something else to talk about. And you're having a conversation in a lot of these cases. So it's you're listening to what they say, and it's like, oh, I have a question about that. And then you end up chasing that, and then it's like, oh, I wish I'd ask him.
Because you got 5 minutes or you got 3 minutes.
Right. Because these are not people that have the opportunity to stand there and talk to you for an hour and a half. It's just, hey, before I go talk to this, I got to go talk to Big Ten Network, but I got 10 minutes right now, 5 minutes right now. So you can try and get as much information as you can. Evening all to the Rod Farva. You guys want coffee? No? Lisa Sims says, I'm still watching some of the videos you have posted on here. We have a ton of stuff you can find if you want to watch like raw press conferences of James Franklin or Drew Allar or whoever. We'll have those posted on the Saturday Glory YouTube channel. That's kind of like our national college football channel. What we have on the Buckeye Huddle channel, and you guys should check these out because these generally, people find these really interesting. I've been cutting together everything fill in the blank said about Ohio State. So everything the Ohio State Buckeyes talked about Michigan, everything the Ohio State Buckeyes talked about Penn State, everything they said about Texas, everything they said about Oregon, separate videos on all those. And then I'm starting to put together everything Drew Allar said about Ohio State, because Drew Allar had a ton to talk about with Ohio State, because Not only do you have the getting over the hump questions, you have the benefits of former Ohio State defensive coordinator Jim Knowles kind of questions. You have the going back to his home state and playing in Ohio Stadium questions. You have there was even stuff with him. He's from Medina. His family is longtime Cleveland Browns season ticket holders. So some Cleveland Browns questions that I lumped in there as well. And I was voicing one of the things to sort of transition between sound bites. And I started saying, speaking of not being able to get over the hump, and I was like, nope, that's too mean. So I took that one out. So it's like, I don't need to make anyone angry. That's fine. So, but yeah, he had some really interesting stuff to say. He's a sharp kid. He's a smart kid. And you come away from a lot of these things like, I like that kid, like really likable players. And I love this because you look at a lot of these guys and it's like, oh, that's the quarterback who did this, or that's the running back who did that. If you spend half an hour with these guys, you kind of feel like you start to get to know them a little bit in the way that we know, a lot of the guys in the Ohio State team. You sort of flesh out the personality a little bit more and sort of understand who they are, which helps us do our jobs.
Yeah, it's interesting. We were sitting next to Jerry DiNardo this morning, and asked him about, so what do you think about the Ohio State kids? He's like, all the kids here are great, and it's a reward for being able to represent the university. So you're not getting any of the knuckleheads types get thrown in here. Yeah,
and Lisa says, I love your sightseeing
videos. Thank you, Lisa.
Really
I appreciate it. I put a lot of work into those.
Yeah, I got up real early yesterday. I don't think I even told that story. We don't need to tell that story. I got up very early yesterday morning to go record a walking up the Vegas Strip video at sunrise, and then got 4 miles up from our hotel, and my phone died, which then meant I couldn't take the bus back. And I was like, I have to be at interviews very shortly. And so that I had to run it down the Vegas Strip in not my running shoes. So yeah, that was,
I like how you said, I'm not going to tell a story.
Well, yeah. I was like, it's a story where I'm the idiot. So it's fine.
I was going to tell it anyway. So.
I'm fine telling that. Here's our buddy, David Turkoleski, past president of the OSU DC Alumni Association, good friend of the show. Did you speak to the head official or anyone else along those lines? If so, what did you learn? Yes, that was Bill Carollo. He was here on Tuesday. We spent, this is the thing that Tony and I do that is maybe the dorkiest thing we do all year, where we just camp out and talk to Bill Carollo for half an hour or 45 minutes, however long they will allow us to talk to Bill Carollo. We stand there and talk to Bill Carollo. I'll have a video with a bunch of the interview clips from that at some point. I haven't gotten to that one yet, but we talked to him about some of the rules changes this year. The biggest one has to do with the players faking injuries and the punishments for that. And if a player goes down after the ball is set for play, then their team is going to be charged with a timeout. So you've got that's kind of the big rule change. There's some other stuff in terms of alignment on special teams plays, and you can't have anyone lined up between the snapper and the holder on a field goal or on a punt. You can't have anyone directly in the line, between them. They are not going to have anymore the call stands versus the call is confirmed on instant replays. That's one change. It's just going to be the call is upheld, because he basically said they were spending an extra 15 to 30 seconds sometimes trying to decipher, well, should this be call stands or should this be call confirmed? And he said, in the end, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't change the outcome. So set the ball down and go play.
When this was announced a few months ago, or whenever it was, I was like, what a cop out, you know, so but then the explanation of it makes sense. Like, why waste time with that? Let's just keep going.
Lisa, Ethan wants to know, was there a specific penalty the Big Ten is going to be monitoring more this year than in years past? It wasn't.
It's really, just the getting off the field type of
stuff. Getting off the field. Basically, he said, I think it was like in an athletic manner. So if if the offense subs the defense, they will stand over the ball and allow the defense time to sub. But if your defensive linemen are walking off the field,
lollygaggers,
Tony. If your defensive linemen are being lollygaggers, they will potentially be penalized for that. So that's not a rule change necessarily, but maybe a little bit of rule interpretation change. Other than that,
because he even got up there and was like, "There's not really a lot of new rules, no big rules."
Yeah, right. Yeah, he talked a lot about the some of the ways that that the officials are evaluated, and the fact that they if you don't have a good season, you can be booted from the Big Ten, and they will lose a couple officials to that every season, which that's good. That's good. Well, they have a little bit of an arrangement with I think the Ohio Valley Conference and the MAC, where they're not exactly farm leagues, but you do kind of get called up to a certain degree. Like the best MAC official, if there's a opening in the Big Ten, you might be looking at bringing in the best MAC official.
Relegation.
Yeah, promotion and relegation in college football. It's finally here. It's with officials. There was Jeff Frazier wants to know: was there any discussion about a certain team and a notice of allegations, or and that certain team is here tomorrow? So,
and I've not really seen any Michigan media that I know of here yet.
I saw Angelique was here.
Okay, good.
Angelique was here. Fantastic. If you don't know Angelique Chingelis, she is a Michigan reporter that deserves a ton of respect. Does a great job. Has been covering the team for a long time and does a phenomenal job.
But I did not hear any questions about Michigan or anything like that.
No, and there, I put together a video about everything Ohio State said about Michigan, and it was a lot less than normal. It was less stuff you normally see about that.
Do you think it's because Ohio State won a national championship without beating Michigan? And so it's
maybe that it's a little less, and I mean, there were questions about that, and Jeremiah Smith talked about the fact that, you can win the national championship without beating them, but also that doesn't mean it's any less of a rivalry. You still really want to beat them.
I think it's maybe less important nationally, less important to narratives, not any less important to the players. And also Ryan Day showed that he can lose that game and not get fired. Mm-hmm. And so then what's the point of talking about it if no coach is going to get fired? Yeah.
And Nate asked, what about the actually hurt player limping off the field and goes down after the ball's placed or play? That's if you're hurt before that, then they will treat it as you're hurt. Then they would presumably not mark the ball for play if an official sees that a guy's hurt. So,
but then he also did say like there are trends where certain teams keep having players hurt, but they're going to take things seriously. It's just they're also going to be watching out for it.
The old misty tears because I'm hurt all of a sudden play. Yes. Yeah. Lisa wants to know, do you think Day is going to coach calm and relax this season?
Week 2.
Yeah. Week 1, I mean, he is literally counting the days to the Texas game. So he is as locked in on that game. And he just beat him. It's not like this is a revenge game. He just beat them, and yet he's this is. I don't think you get to be the head coach of Ohio State or any major college football program without being really competitive. And Ryan Day is about as normal a human being as you can possibly be. Like he is could be your next door neighbor, have you over for a barbecue kind of. I mean, like as normal and well balanced a human being as you can possibly be, while also being a high level coach. But also he wants to win, and also he's lost. He hasn't lost very much, but he's lost often enough to know that your life in Columbus, Ohio, is better if you win football games as opposed to not winning football games.
Yeah, and he's also talked about he wants to join Woody Hayes as an Ohio State coach with multiple national championships, and so he's got that hunger. The players have a hunger of. So many of them weren't starters on a national championship team, and Caleb Downs, the starters were like, yeah. That's last year. This is this year. There's a ton of hungry people in the program, and Day is as hungry as anybody. He's not anybody that I think is satisfied with last year. I always point at the 2015 team that came back fat and happy. To this point, I don't expect any of that this year. If they lose to Texas, it's because Texas is very good. Go back and watch some of those games in 2015 where you're like, should you be this close to Hawaii at the third quarter type of stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, they were trailing Northern Illinois in the second half, I think. I mean, that was a team that those guys had done it, and then they came back.
Yeah.
This is a team where a lot of those guys were there, but they weren't necessarily the guy who was doing it. So, some of those guys are there. I don't think Jeremiah Smith is going to be resting on his laurels either. Speaking of people who did not get to the place that they are with by being complacent.
Yeah, the 2015 team, it was just so odd because so many of the major players on the 2014 team were second-year guys.
Mm-hmm.
So they had to come back.
Yeah,
They had no decision to make. And it's like they were already, their
Yeah.
minds were already in the NFL, a lot of those guys.
Well, and you kind of ran into that in 1969 as well, where you had the Super Softs and they won the national championship, and all they had to do was, they went through a pretty not very good Big Ten that season, and all they had to do was beat Michigan, and then
what happened?
And then they didn't. So, and then the next year, all they had to do was beat Stanford, Tony, and then they didn't. And yeah, it is hard to maintain that level, and it's also only one team gets to win the national championship. So it's just because you don't do it 2 years in a row does not mean that you failed or that it means it's hard to do.
Yeah.
So, Tony, speaking of people who are hungry, we probably need to wrap up. So we do appreciate everyone here joining us for the evening live show here. We will be back tomorrow morning. We'll have our usual what are we gonna aim for? 11 a.m. Eastern time?
Yep.
Yeah, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Thursday morning, our final morning show here, and then we will be back tomorrow afterwards as well for another sort of final recap of the day. Thursday is Michigan Day. It's also USC Day and Iowa Day and Michigan State Day and UCLA Day and Purdue Day. I think
Purdue Day.
Yes.
That's going to be our first time to hear from Barry Odom.
Yes. So, but I have a feeling I know what the topic of most of the conversation on here will be tomorrow. So we will talk about that. We will talk about the Michigan Wolverines, potential news, if there is any, on the notice of allegations someone asking about earlier. They have some on-field stuff that's interesting too. They have a true freshman quarterback who's supposed to be pretty darn good. Going to be interested to talk to Lincoln Riley, see what he's willing to talk about in terms of their approach to recruiting and all that kind of stuff. Going to be a lot of interesting stuff to talk about. So we will be back here for that. But in the meantime, if you want to talk to us, you can do that at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That's where Tony, Kevin, and I cover the team. We got Mark covering recruiting. We got our whole team of X's and O's gurus there as well, all to make you a smarter football fan. That's all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. And make sure you also check out all of our podcasts. You can find the Buckeye Weekly podcast, Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning, Big Me Kickoff, Skull Chasers Recruiting podcast. We get a whole mess of podcasts. Just search Buckeye Huddle on your podcast platform of choice. You can subscribe to all of them, all free, all for you, all from BuckeyeHuddle.com. That will do it for you today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you.